They bought my sister a yacht with the money I spent 7 years building my business. No warning, no apology, just a toast and a smile while I stood there with a paper plate in my hand. Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm the quiet one in the family, the steady one, the one they thought would never fight back. But here's the thing about quiet people. We remember everything, and sometimes the softest voices make the loudest impact. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments. And if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way I can send you a special greeting. Now, let's start the story together. I arrived late, but no one seemed to notice. The backyard was already filled with laughter, warm smoke curling from the grill, and the faint glow of citronella candles trying to fight off the Texas bugs. My heels sunk slightly into the grass as I walked past the cooler of drinks and toward the folding table that rocked with every paper plate set down. Fireflies blinked lazily along the fence. It felt like any other summer night in Sugarland. I set the potato salad down, a last-minute grab from the grocery store, and smoothed the plastic lid like that would make it more homemade. I was still in my work clothes. A navy blouse slightly wrinkled from the drive, slacks that didn't breathe in this heat, and a tote bag weighing on my shoulder like a second spine. I had come straight from the office, thinking this was just a simple family dinner. Ribs, lemonade. Maybe Dad's reluctant smile if the beer was cold enough. I wasn't ready for what actually came. Danica stood near the grill, her dress crisp white, untouchable. She looked like someone who never worried about spilling barbecue sauce, who never had to stay late at a job that barely noticed she existed. Her smile widened when Mom clinked a fork against her glass and called for everyone's attention. "Big announcement," Mom said, practically glowing. "We did something special to celebrate Danica's engagement." A few people clapped. I took a sip of sweet tea that was too sweet and waited. "We bought her a yacht." Silence. Or maybe it was just in my head. My cup paused midair. I looked from my mother to Danica, whose modest shrug was so rehearsed it could have been choreographed. "A yacht?" I said before I could stop myself. Mom turned to me, smile still wide. "Yes, isn't that fun? Something she and Brad can enjoy. Something big." My throat went dry. "With what money?" Dad looked up from his plate like I had asked about the weather. "That account, the business fund, the one you were sitting on." I didn't respond at first. The words made sense, grammatically, but they didn't make any moral kind of sense. "You mean the startup fund? The one I built for 7 years?" He shrugged. "It's all in the family, right?" Danica waved a hand like this was a minor misunderstanding. "You weren't using it, and you always said you hate the water." That was the moment something inside me tilted. 7 years of skipped holidays, of pitching to people who never called back, of coding until my eyes went blurry. I had made peace with failure, but I hadn't prepared for theft, especially not from the people who once told me they were proud. My hand gripped the plastic fork. Mom stepped forward with a paper plate already loaded. "Don't make this about you," she said softly, almost sweetly. "Be happy for your sister." I didn't take the plate. Instead, I looked at her, then at Danica. She was laughing now, telling someone about the yacht's name. Silver Current, apparently. Brad thought it sounded both elegant and fast. I turned my eyes to the patchy grass beneath my feet. The fireflies kept blinking like nothing had happened. I bent slightly and set the plate down on the lawn, right next to the cooler. No one followed me when I walked out the back gate. The air outside the fence was quieter, still warm, still thick, but somehow different. I walked slowly to my car, keys trembling in my hand, not from rage, but from the kind of clarity that stings. When I got home, I didn't bother changing. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled my phone from my bag, opened the app I had spent years building, watching the numbers shrink. There were no alerts. No funding, no pending requests, just the ghost of something that used to be mine. I tapped and held the icon, waited for the little X to appear, and deleted it. Not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left in it. I didn't call anyone that night, not Reeve, who was away on a trip, not my mother, not even Danica. I just sat in the dark, the hum of the AC cutting through the silence like a question I didn't want to answer. For the rest of the summer, I didn't speak to them. There were texts, group messages about birthdays, a forwarded meme or two, but I didn't reply. No one asked why. No one called to check in, and maybe that hurt most of all. They typed low on my badge, just the first 2 letters. Maybe a typo, maybe not. I didn't ask them to fix it. The front desk didn't look up when they handed it over, just slid the lanyard across the counter like I was one more name in a long queue of Monday morning arrivals. I clipped it on and stepped into the main lobby of Signal Fuse. It was colder than I expected. Not just the temperature, which was kept unnaturally low, but the air itself, quiet, polished, intentional. Everything smelled faintly of citrus and toner. Someone passed me with a reusable cup that said, "Don't talk before espresso." I kept walking. My cubicle was buried in the HR analytics wing, a stretch of identical workstations separated by low partitions and muted beige walls. No photos, no clutter, just silence and screens. It suited me. I hadn't come here to be seen. After what happened with my family, after the yacht, after the 7 years of my startup vanished, I wanted a place where no one asked questions. That's why I took my maiden name. Why I applied under Chen and not Callahan. Why I hadn't told anyone, not even Reeve, that Danica worked here too. I learned quickly that the office ran on caffeine, Slack threads, and unspoken hierarchies. Marketing had their own wing with floor-to-ceiling glass, ergonomic chairs, and succulents by the window. We had wall calendars and a broken Keurig. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. Until Danica walked into it. It was a Tuesday. I was going over attrition trend data, trying to reverse engineer a dashboard someone else had built and promptly abandoned. She strolled in with a soft knock on the panel, a folder in one hand, and that familiar, polished look I hadn't seen since we were kids playing piano recitals. Her in a starched white blouse, me with wrinkled sheet music. "Well, if it isn't our surprise hire," she said, voice lilting, just loud enough for Janice to glance up from her desk. She placed the folder on mine. "Low priority audit, shouldn't take long. You'll get to warm up Excel a bit." I nodded without speaking. She waited, smiled, then walked away. I opened the folder. Employee engagement surveys, outdated by 2 quarters, half in PDF format, some missing page numbers. I sighed, took a breath, and got to work. At lunch, I sat near the corner of the break room, head down, sandwich in one hand, trying to look busy enough not to invite conversation. Danica entered 15 minutes in, like she knew exactly when people would already be halfway through their meals. She grabbed a sparkling water from the fridge and sat across from 2 interns. Her voice, clear as always, carried across the room. "Reeve used to call me after debate club," she said, laughing lightly. God, he was such a fixer, always trying to make the world more efficient. Someone nearby perked up. "Reeve Callahan? The tech investor?" Danica smiled modestly. "We were just kids." I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. But I tightened my grip on my cup so hard it made a soft crinkle. From the side, Carla from Data Ops gave me a glance, part sympathy, part warning. I held her gaze for half a second, then looked away. Later that afternoon, my Slack pinged. A message from a channel I hadn't joined, just a meme. A cartoon of a baby bird being pushed from a nest with the caption, "When you only get hired because someone owes your sister a favor." I stared at it, didn't laugh, didn't react, just saved the image, closed the thread, and muted the channel. That evening, I stayed behind. The office grew quieter as people trickled out, phones in hand, laughing softly, jackets over one arm. No one said goodbye. They never did. I was still cleaning up survey data when Danica appeared again, this time in the weekly team meeting, presenting some early campaign numbers with her usual shine. "I've got a stretch assignment," she said, flipping to the last slide. "Lauren will be handling the initial analytics pull. Should be straightforward." I froze. She hadn't told me. I hadn't even seen the campaign dashboard. "Let's aim for end of day tomorrow," she added with a gracious smile. "Thanks, Lo." I smiled back, quietly. By 7 p.m., the campaign folder she'd linked turned out to be a mess. Outdated versions, corrupted graphs, missing access credentials. The dashboard was locked behind a permissions wall I didn't have. I emailed Carla. No response. Texted my team lead. "Didn't know this was on your plate," she replied. At 9:45, I was still at my desk. The last janitor had already emptied the trash. My screen was dimmed to conserve power. My body ached from sitting too long. I opened a blank folder on my desktop. I named it one word: recourse. Then I started taking screenshots. The pendant lights buzzed faintly above us, casting sharp shadows across the rows of chairs, arranged like a makeshift theater. I sat in the second row, sandwiched between a product analyst and a new hire who smelled like spearmint gum and nervous sweat. The quarterly meeting had started 10 minutes ago, and already I could feel my heart tapping against my ribs like it was searching for a way out. Danica stood on stage, framed by 2 retractable banners printed with the company's growth metrics and corporate values. Words like innovation is synergy, impact. She held the presentation clicker like it was a remote to the entire room. People leaned in when she spoke. She had that kind of voice, like a TV anchor with a marketing degree. Behind her, the screen shifted to a colorful dashboard. Retention scores, demographic overlays, something about behavioral loops. I recognized the data. I'd built the base of it 2 weeks ago before she'd taken over the slide deck and changed the color scheme. Then she smiled. "And now," she said, letting the silence stretch, "Lauren Chen from HR Analytics will walk us through our engagement forecast." Heads turned. So did my stomach. I hadn't been told I'd be speaking. My name wasn't in the agenda. No one had briefed me. My palms went cold and my legs felt foreign as I stood, smoothing my blazer like that would buy me time. Danica stepped aside with a gracious gesture, lips curved like someone offering a seat she'd already warmed. I walked to the podium, the small one at stage left, the one used by interns and guest speakers, not executives. I pulled up my version of the report on the secondary screen, adjusted the mic. "As you can see," I began, my voice a little too soft at first, "we modeled a projected 12% lift in content engagement, primarily among Gen X users, based on revised—" Danica cut in. "Is that the right chart?" she asked, smiling out toward the audience. "Doesn't look updated to me." I blinked. "I updated it Tuesday, after the sync call." Danica tilted her head slightly, stepping just close enough to the mic to whisper, but not close enough to hide. "She was a favor hire," she said. Quiet, almost intimate, but the mic was still on. It caught every word, clear, unfiltered, unmissable. The room didn't gasp, it inhaled. Dozens of heads turned slightly. A few people looked down, others sideways, trying to pretend they hadn't heard. My ears buzzed. For a second, I wasn't sure if I was still holding the clicker. Danica stepped back like nothing had happened. "Thank you, Lauren," she said smoothly, already clicking to the next slide. "We'll circle back to the engagement model next sprint." I stood there, frozen. Clarissa, seated in the back row, met my eyes for just a moment, then looked away. I stepped off the stage without speaking. The floor felt too hard, my heels too loud. I returned to my seat and stared straight ahead while the meeting moved on. Someone else started talking about brand awareness and Q1 goals. I heard none of it. When the lights dimmed for the next demo video, I glanced at my phone. Slack notification, a meme, a screenshot of me. Mid-sentence, eyes slightly unfocused, mouth open as if unsure whether to speak or swallow. Captioned, "When your data don't data." Laugh emojis, flame emojis, a coffee cup reaction from someone in accounting. I tapped the image, saved it, filed it. Recourse. After the meeting, I didn't linger. I walked quickly to my desk, shut down my computer, and left the building without speaking to anyone. The wind had picked up outside. Leaves swirled across the parking lot like they had somewhere to be. At home, the lights were off. Reeve wasn't back yet. I didn't turn anything on. I just sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, phone in my hand. A text buzzed in. "How'd it go?" From Reeve. I stared at the screen for a while, then typed, "Fine." I turned the phone face down and leaned back onto the pillows, eyes wide open in the dark. Above me, the ceiling fan spun slowly, a whisper against the silence, and that silence felt heavier than anything Danica had said. I didn't raise my voice. I raised my folder. That was how it started. February came with cold nights and quiet floors. After 5 p.m., the office at Signal Fuse emptied like someone had pulled the plug on the day. You could hear the hum of the HVAC system, the occasional printer warming itself to life, and the slow, steady click of your own typing. If you stayed long enough, the space began to feel less like a workplace and more like a confession booth, just you and whatever you couldn't say out loud during daylight hours. I had been staying late often, not because of deadlines, not because I was behind, because I had things to collect. That Tuesday, I found Preston hunched over 2 monitors in the UX corner, one earbud in, posture like he'd fused into the chair hours ago. He was the kind of person people forgot to notice, which made him, in my mind, the most observant one here. "Do you have a second?" I asked quietly. He turned, surprised. "Sure." I need to recover the original file trail on the engagement campaign deck, the one from January. I wrote most of it, but the final was credited to someone else. He blinked, didn't ask who, just nodded. "Give me 10, he said. 10 minutes later, he slid me a paper packet, printed logs, version histories, metadata. My initials lined the left margin in time-stamped ink. "Be careful," he said without drama. "You'll want to save these somewhere safe." I thanked him, tucked the documents into my tote, and returned to my desk. That same night, just past 10, I received a message from an anonymous inbox. No subject line, no greeting, just a clipped audio file and a single line of text. "You didn't hear this from me, but you didn't deserve any of it." I hesitated for a beat before pressing play. Danica's voice unmistakable. "She's a parasite with good hair. I don't care if she crashes. It'll make my job easier." Silence. Not the kind that fades. The kind that freezes. I sat still for a long time, the audio looping in my mind. Not because it surprised me, but because it didn't. I saved the clip, renamed my folder, Recourse Active. 2 nights later, we had the company gala. It was held at a boutique hotel downtown, the kind with string lights on the patio and tiny vases of hydrangeas on the cocktail tables. Everyone dressed like they were trying to impress someone who might not show up. My assigned seat was table 9, next to the catering prep door, behind a half column. No one said it, but it was the table for the ones who didn't quite matter. Danica opened the program with a speech about innovation, synergy, and the importance of mentorship. Her gown shimmered. Her hair was in that same impossibly perfect wave. People clapped at all the right times. I sipped my water and stared at my bread plate. Then, from the table 2 rows up, I heard muffled laughter, the kind people try to hide behind a napkin. Janice, seated diagonally from me, caught my eye. She leaned in. "You should see this," she whispered, sliding her phone under the table. It was a video clip, an edit from last quarter's Q&A session. Me, mid-sentence, slowed down and zoomed in like a reality TV blooper. The caption read, "Analytics girl, but make it awkward." No sound, just elevator jazz playing behind the text. I didn't laugh. I didn't sigh. I watched. I turned the phone screen face down. Janice didn't speak again, and I appreciated her for that. Later that night, I didn't cry. I didn't message Reeve right away. I didn't write in a journal or call anyone to ask why people could be so casually cruel. I placed my folder on the center of the table. No drama, just fact. One by one, I distributed physical packets. The room was so quiet you could hear the rustle of cardstock, the whisper of paper sliding across polished oak. Inside each folder were printed logs, timestamps, Slack captures, voice transcripts, the kind of proof that doesn't beg, it just is. "I'd like to begin," I said, "by playing a clip from our last company-wide meeting." I tapped my tablet. The speakers came alive with a breath, then Danica's voice. She was a favor hire. Clear, cold, mic still on. No one moved. Then came the second clip, the one I hadn't needed to amplify, but did. "She's a parasite with good hair. I don't care if she crashes. It'll make my job easier." Danica snapped. "This is edited. This is slander." She turned to the board, exasperated. "She hacked our archives. That's how she got the voice files." She wasn't flustered yet, just loud. Reeve, seated near the end, finally looked up. "We have server logs," he said calmly. "Lauren didn't hack anything, but someone from Danica's team did, using Lauren's credentials." The legal rep adjusted her glasses. "Would you like to elaborate?" Reeve opened his laptop, turned it toward the room. On screen, a time-stamped login sequence from 2 weeks ago. An IP address flagged under Lauren's name, while Lauren had been at an off-site HR compliance session in another building. Then came the security footage. Lauren's assistant by role, Danica's in function, entering the server room, swiping a badge, plugging in a flash drive. Danica froze. Her hand dropped from the table. The board chair turned to HR. "Clarissa." She nodded once, voice steady. "Effective immediately. Danica Chen is suspended pending an ethics and security investigation." Danica tried to speak again, but the chair raised a hand. She sat back, eyes wide but saying nothing. Silence settled across the room. No gasps, no outrage, just tension turning into clarity. The chair looked at me. "Do you wish to press further?" I shook my head. Number I just wanted to be heard and remembered correctly. I reached into my folder one last time, pulled out an envelope, placed it gently on the table. "My resignation," I said, "effective today." The chair blinked. "May we ask why?" I smiled, not with triumph, but with finality. "I helped build this," I said quietly. "I won't let it erase me." No one applauded, no one stood, but Janice, seated 2 chairs down, met my eyes and didn't look away. Some victories don't come with fireworks, just silence and space to breathe. It's late summer in East Austin, the kind of morning where the cicadas are already warming up their chorus, and the fan on the porch clicks every third rotation. The windows are open. The air smells like lemon balm and freshly watered soil. My tea's still hot, and no one's pinging me on Slack. I sit on the porch with one leg tucked under me, laptop closed, no alarms. Reeves inside, making something with sweet potatoes and cinnamon, humming like he always does when he's at peace. This is what peace looks like. It doesn't knock. It just settles in when you've made room for it. It's been over a year since I left Signal Fuse. Now I work with local startups, small, woman-owned businesses trying to build things that don't require someone to shrink in order to fit. I help them with structure, strategy, ethics. Mostly, I listen. Sometimes, I share. My hours are mine, and when I take a break at 10, I don't feel guilty. Last week, I got an internal newsletter from a former colleague. No fanfare, no drama. Just a subtle note in the corner. Organizational update. The vice president of marketing role has been retired. Distribution of responsibilities is in progress. Danica's name wasn't mentioned. Her title was gone. Her corner had faded, quietly, like a watermark peeled from a window. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel the need. Instead, I found the small cardboard box in the back of my desk drawer, the one with old receipts, dead batteries, and one last unopened envelope. I had written her name on it months ago, but never sent it. Now I slipped in a USB drive. On it, original decks, email threads, edit trails. Not for accusation, just for memory. I added a single post-it. This could have been shared credit. Then I walked it to the post office. No return address. Later that night, while organizing old files, I found the folded piece of paper tucked into the side pocket of a folder I hadn't opened since we left Sugarland. Grandma's handwriting, still steady after all these years. Your voice is quiet, but it carries. I sat still for a long time. Then I found a frame, cleaned the glass, and placed it on the shelf above my desk. I opened my laptop, created a spreadsheet. I began building a timeline, line by line. Each column marked a moment, a message, a meeting, a meme. I entered the dates, the context, the witnesses. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about fairness. It was about memory, precision, proof. The following evening, Reeve and I sat on the couch. He was going over expense reports for a pitch, eyes tired but steady. I hadn't told him about the clip, not yet. He looked up from his laptop and asked, "You okay?" "I'm getting there," I said without looking up. He waited, then closed his screen. "You know," he said softly, "you're not just an employee here." I glanced at him, confused. "I never told you," he went on, "but 2 years ago during Series D, I added your name to the stakeholder ledger." I blinked. "You own 4% of Signal Fuse," he said simply. "You're a silent stakeholder, full access, voting rights, if you ever choose to activate them." I didn't speak right away, not because I was unsure of what it meant, but because I finally understood what it could mean. That night, I opened my folder and created a new tab. Board visibility. Optional, but not for long. Danica had the microphone. I had the metadata. She stood at the front of the boardroom, framed by the morning light slicing through the windows, gesturing toward a sleek pie chart that painted success in perfect color blocks. Her voice had that same balance of conviction and charm she'd always had, confident enough to sound rehearsed, casual enough to pass as spontaneous. The boardroom on the top floor of Signal Fuse was like everything else about the company: clean, expensive, calculated. Polished chairs, touchscreen panels embedded in the table, water pitchers so clear they looked ornamental. But the tension wasn't decorative. You could feel it in the way people adjusted their ties or took notes they'd never read again. I waited until the chart faded, until Danica turned to reinforce her final point with one of her signature rhetorical pivots. Then the board chair, a gray-haired man with a voice like the morning news, cleared his throat. "Let's pause here," he said. "We have a registered stakeholder requesting to speak." All eyes shifted. Danica's hand, still on the clicker, paused mid-slide. She turned slowly, expecting a retiree, a suit, maybe a shareholder from out of state. Instead, it was me. I stood, walked the length of the boardroom in steady steps that sounded louder than they were. "I'm here," I said, "not just as an employee of Signal Fuse, but as someone whose work, presence, and voice were erased. Some things deserve to be seen every day." A few days later, Reeve and I took a walk through downtown. The sun was soft, just beginning to melt into the edges of the buildings. We passed coffee shops that had changed names twice, a mural in progress, and the glass facade of Signal Fuse's headquarters. He looked at me and asked, "Want to stop in?" I smiled, not with bitterness, just with truth. "No," I said. "I'm done building things that forget who built them." We kept walking, past the glass, past the old versions of ourselves. My shoes felt light. The sun was warm on my shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of being seen. Because silence, I've learned, isn't always retreat. Sometimes it's just the breath before your voice becomes impossible to ignore. And now, mine carries. Some endings don't need applause, just a steady step forward. That day, as I walked past the building that once tried to shrink me, I wasn't angry. I was free. Sometimes, the hardest thing isn't speaking up. It's choosing when to speak and why. Family can wound, workplaces can overlook, but our voice, when used with clarity and care, can restore what was taken. You don't always need to fight louder. You just need to stand. If this story touched something in you, I'd love to hear what it brought back. Feel free to share your thoughts or pass it along to someone who might need that quiet reminder. You matter, even when they pretend you don't.